Welcome, Sovereign Sisters. Welcome to the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement podcast, where today we're going to be exploring, number one, the Capricorn Full Moon's profound lesson of surrendering control leading to true power. We'll be looking at, specifically today, breaking the cycle, how childhood trauma rewires our hormones for generations, where we're going to be examining some groundbreaking research and also generational trauma information and its lasting impact on our bodies, especially our hormones. We're going to be looking at the holistic approach to unlocking generational hormonal balance and discover some of the most powerful practices that can help transform our endocrine system, which ultimately transforms our hormones. We're going to be also looking at the Ancestral tarot reading for the week, which is all about us being adaptable to this slow process of change that we're all moving through. I am your host, Veronica Barragan, also known as Jyoti Rajikor, and welcome to this week's Sovereign Movement podcast episode. For our new listeners, for those of you that have joined us for the first time, the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement is a global initiative dedicated to helping women like you holistically heal and break free from generational cycles of emotional pain and trauma. We integrate the science of Kundalini yoga therapy and the spiritual psychotherapy of A Course in Miracles to disrupt these ancestral karmic patterns so that we can create a safe space for healing and for visibility. Our mission is to lead women like you towards their personal sovereignty and holistic well-being while building a legacy of healing for 7 generations before and after you. So welcome. What a week. And let me just start by saying that if you are listening to this right after the full moon in Capricorn, which occurred on Sunday, July 21st, you should really be super excited and very much open to all of the amount of tremendous opportunities that will be at our forefront to make some major changes in our life. I think one of the things that was very noticeable from yesterday's full moon was obviously there was the big news that President Biden had stepped down from running against Donald Trump in this election that the United States of America is going through. And this is not really a surprise. I think on Wednesday or Tuesday, I posted last week that to expect this to actually happen. And it's not because I'm Nostradamus and I can see the future, although I can, but it's not really because of that. It has to do with the fact that when you study astrology, and then if you get really deep and you not only study the collective consciousness of astrology, but also you look at like the specific person's birth chart and you look at what they're moving through, the birth chart and astrology tell a perfect story as to what to expect, but it's not a prophecy. You know, this is what the energy looks like. This is what has happened in the past when the energy was at the same position, meaning the stars and planets were doing this same dance. And here's the things that you can expect. And it wasn't just me. There were a lot of astrologers that were talking about already the situation that happened with Donald Trump, with the assassination attempt or whatever you're calling it, and the situation with Biden. There were already a ton of astrologers that were talking about that this would be the week that he'd be stepping down. And the reason that is because we are entering into a brand new era. We've entered it. In case you have noticed, if you feel strange, if you feel weird in your body, like if you know something big is happening or has happened and you don't feel like the same human being as even a week or two ago, is because of this new era that we've entered into. And this is why we're seeing a lot of different things fall apart. A lot of things, structures like government, healthcare, education, truths being exposed of how they were toxic and how they were killing people instead of helping them and healing them, and how corruption has ruled. And that's why a lot of people are actually afraid of power. And maybe you in your life have had power somehow or some way, maybe in your business, maybe in your partnership, in a relationship, and maybe you have abused it. And the whole thing about what this new era that we're entering in is, especially with this full moon of Capricorn, which is all about authority, about structure, ruled by Saturn, which is karma. If you are not entering into this new era willingly and understanding that the abuse of power not only will be revealed, but that it no longer will work in this new era, then these people that are still abusing their power are going to be falling like flies. They're going to be asked to step down from their leadership roles, or they will be forced to step down because of mental health, because of physical health. And it's not that God is a punishing God and is now punishing these people for all the evil things they've done, all of the ways that they have abused their power. It's just that karma is due. God never ever punishes us. But we, at the root of who we are souls having a human experience. We are created in the image of God. Within each and every one of us lies what is known as the Christ consciousness, what our brother Jesus Christ came to teach us, which is unconditional love. I'm not talking about evangelical, fanatic Christianity, where we're the chosen ones and everyone else is not good. That's how millions and millions of people have been killed under the name of religion. I'm talking about the true teachings of our brother Jesus Christ, that we are all the same, that we're all created in the image of God, that at the core of who we are holy, and that we can remember this and embody it if we follow the process of salvation, which is forgiveness. First, forgiveness for others, and then the process of spiritual psychotherapy of forgiveness with ourselves. If you can do that, you can bring all these mistakes you've made, because sin is not real. We make mistakes all the time, but we can atone for them. We can make what was wrong right. We can learn from lessons if we are accountable and if we're able to not hide these things in the shadows like we usually do, especially with generational trauma. We don't want to talk about it. We don't know how to talk about it. We don't know how to heal it. And what this whole Capricorn Full Moon is like, okay, look, if you've been doing the healing work, if you've been really bringing things to the atonement. I mean, saints at one point, they were criminals, right? My life, who I am right now, doesn't even reflect who I used to be in 2012 and 2013. I made a ton of mistakes, but I also followed a process and a journey of healing so that I could atone for those mistakes. Then those people, saints, people who have atoned for the mistakes, of course, they deserve forgiveness. Of course, they deserve healing. But those people that are not atoning for the mistakes, that are still abusing power, that are still under the old Darwinian theory of competition, of who's better, of chosen ones, of my religion is better, those are the people that are not doing very well right now. And this is why you don't have to take justice or take revenge. You have to just allow their own process to evolve, and that of course will always lead them back to accountability and the atonement, whether they do it in this lifetime or whether they do it another lifetime. Like if someone is obviously harming someone, if there's an abuser, of course I don't believe that they should be thrown in jail. I believe that they should be thrown into a healing center where they can finally heal the root cause of why this is happening, so no one else has to experience this again. But of course you need to learn about boundaries, but that's a whole other podcast episode, because boundaries are not you protecting yourself. Boundaries are created so that you can protect, that person can be protected from themselves, because they're obviously acting out of childhood trauma. We're going to talk a little bit about that today. So really, this full moon is not about you focusing on what everyone else is doing and cancel culture and look at this evil person. It's how are you dealing with your own power? Are you afraid of your power? And if you're afraid of your power, is it because you haven't forgiven yourself for ways that you've used your power? In a woman setting perhaps her power as a leader, and sexually, perhaps her power with her beauty, her power in all these different aspects that we can actually use it to make other people feel worse. And more importantly, this full moon in Capricorn, the big message, and I shared this in my Instagram post recently. I also sent out an email about this, and I talked a lot about it in our women's community sadhana practice. We had a beautiful morning full moon sadhana practice where all the community gathered, the women that are part of Satori Vitality and Spirituality and the Sovereign Sisterhood Academy. And we meditated together. We brought in this beautiful new era with an open heart. And one of the stories that I shared with them was this book that is called The Surrender Experiment, that was written by, it's an autobiography actually of Michael Singer's life, who also is the author of a book known as The Untethered Soul, which I've never read The Untethered Soul, but everyone talks about The Untethered Soul. And the whole teachings and lessons of Michael Singer's book of The Surrender Experiment was about how when he finally learned to surrender to a higher power, when he finally learned to say yes to life instead of make a commotion out of everything. That's what Yogi Bhajan calls it. You're not in control of your emotions. You don't know how to work with them. You don't know how to alchemize them. So then you make a commotion out of everything. He learned to just surrender. And because he learned to surrender and trust God, paradoxically, that's what led to him embodying his highest power. He was led to creating a massive amount of success. He wasn't chasing things. He knew he was worthy. He knew that everything happened for a reason, and he wasn't making a commotion out of emotion. So he went from this guy who wanted to just meditate and be a yogi and live off of his land and not be bothered, to going to a land, building this house where he did that. But then all these opportunities started to come to him. So then he created a multi-million-dollar construction company. He created, because of the opportunities that came to him, he didn't go chase them. He then created a multi-billion-dollar tech company. He created a beautiful, tremendously huge spiritual center in Florida. All of these things, not because he chased, but because he surrendered and said yes to all that God brought to him. And that's this lesson of the full moon. And there's so many other stories like this of truly successful people. I consider him to be a truly successful person because not only does he have the money, but he has the fulfillment, right? There's another story of the last week that I recently watched, this amazing movie that you all should go watch as well. It's called Money Over Power. No, excuse me, Love Over Power. It could be Love Over Money too, but it's about this gentleman who was the heir to the Baskin Robbins legacy. The dad had created Baskin Robbins. Again, he walked away from a multi-billion-dollar company. Why? Because the values of the company and the values of what his dad had taught him were not in alignment with who he was. And he said, no, I'm going to walk away. I'm going to go live my life and do the things that I know are right for me. And from that, literally leaving, growing food off of his land, he wrote this this book that led him to be a multimillionaire that was about how your food makes you sick and how to heal yourself through food. And he wasn't trying. He just did the things that came naturally to him, that basically came to him from this higher power. That's both Michael Singer and both this gentleman from the Baskin Robbins story, same story. So we're taught in this world to hustle, Capricorn old ways of being, to take massive action, to use the mind. But in these stories, and these are stories of true success, we're seeing that it's a combination of both. It's a combination of the heart, your intuition, your ability to surrender to a higher power, and then the mind, the masculine energy that then allows you to say yes or take action upon the opportunities that come to you. Now, there's a lot of yogic teachings that I can share with you around this, but ultimately, this is a reflective of doing the healing work and realizing that you are intrinsically worthy and holy, and knowing that God is not a punishing God, that God loves you and will always support you, especially if you're obedient to these higher visions you have of your life, whatever that looks like, because it doesn't look the same for everyone. This could be you wanting to be the leader of your company in corporate America. This could be you wanting a conscious relationship. This could be you desiring prosperity, where you don't have to worry about that. There's nothing wrong with that. What's wrong is why we want it, right? Is it so I can get approval from the world, so my parents can finally love me, so I can show that mofo for what he did to me? Those intentions in itself are going to be your biggest blockage, or even to the point where you can manifest them, but it's going to take you to this life of unfulfillment, depression, anxiety, and that is not success. So this Capricorn full moon, what it did is it really invited us to consider three very important questions. And I want you to reflect on that this week, because as we close out July, we have this week, for example, we have Leo season that starts on today, on Monday, where now we're going from Cancer season to Leo season, where you're going to be able to express yourself more creatively, more authentically. You're going to have this ability and passion, Mars now in Gemini, to take like really bold action towards your goals. You're going to be able to really celebrate your achievements. This is all Leo season. We're getting ready to enter that today. But this full moon in Capricorn, to prepare you for your success, to prepare you for this new routine, this new way of thinking. We dove deep into that this morning in Sadhana, in my community Sadhana. How do you develop a new routine? What are the components that develop a new routine in your life? Which are, of course, positive self-affirmation, also discipline, but the most important thing, environment. That's the most important thing in order to stay on track with whatever it is that you're setting as goals or new routines. So Leo season is going to support you to do that. But before we do that, you got to close out, really feel like energetically this month of July and what this very powerful full moon taught you, because this is like a cycle closing from 2008. Like we are now getting ready to enter fully where Pluto is going to be in Aquarius for the next 23 years. So we are totally leaving an old self behind. And what's going to help you do that is reflection. Is why I love journaling with my meditation practice as well. And the 3 questions that I highly, highly recommend that you sit with today, this week are, number 1, how can I surrender to what life is presenting to me right now? Wherever you're causing resistance, whether there's an illness, whether there's a person in your life, whether there's a situation, a job, that resistance is what is creating time for you, which time is what creates suffering. So you need to ask yourself, this full moon especially, how can I surrender to what life is presenting to me right now? And I will tell you that in journaling, the answers don't come from me. They come from a higher power. If I sit with the question long enough, things start to come through that I know I'm channeling from God, that I know that are not coming from my programming or my ego identity. So that's one question. The second question that you really should be asking yourself right now is, can I trust that I am exactly where I need to be for my own personal growth? Can I trust that I am exactly where I need to be for my own personal growth? And it's okay if the answer is no, but it's important for you to recognize that you are putting this energy behind your actions that is not helping you. It's causing stagnation. Because if you are comparing yourself to someone else, if you are then saying, I'm this old and I should be here, then that is your programming. That's your trauma that's driving the actions you're taking. And that's what I was talking to you about, true success. It's not true success if you have $40 million in the bank account, but none of your family members talk to you, and you are constantly comparing yourself and you can't fall asleep unless you take 20 sleeping pills. That's not success. Success is not only having the money, but also having fulfillment, having health, physical, mental, and spiritual health. 3 weeks ago, I got a cough and a cold. And I thought to myself, and even though I surrendered to it and I fully enjoyed it, even like I've never enjoyed being sick, like I was so grateful. I was like, we take things for granted. Even a little cough and a little cold completely throws you off. And I really relished and kind of like look back at those moments where I could just get up in the morning and do my thing. And now I couldn't do that. So whatever you're moving, and I had to trust, right? I had to surrender. Because I surrendered, I actually was only really, really sick, maybe 2 to 3 days. It was the cough thing that was the after effect that I had to really deal with. But I mean, there are some people that stay sick for weeks, for years. Why are they sick for weeks and years? Because they're not trusting the lesson and the moment that is happening to them right there. So that's what this full moon is asking you to do. Now, number 3 is, how might letting go of control paradoxically lead to our success? Is it your authority problem that you're wanting to control everything that is then causing you to block your success? And I want you to go and watch these movies. The Baskin Robbins movie, I think that one is on Prime, or maybe it's on Gaia. And then Michael Singer's book. You can get it on audiobook, you can read it, but read his autobiography on the surrender experiment and really, really take it in, what he's teaching you and what he's telling you there. If you really allow yourself to do that, your life will change and you'll be able to surrender more into whatever God is sharing with you, showing you, whatever life is trying to teach you. Because even if you go run away to a cave to meditate, life will find you. That was one of the biggest lessons that Michael Singer actually found out and learned. So next week, I'm going to spend a little bit more time talking about Leo season. I'm also going to spend a little bit more time preparing you for August astrology, so that as above, so below, we can use these energies to prepare for our success instead of to prepare for our demise, which is ultimately what we do when we don't prepare for our success. So let's move now to the next segment. We've talked a little bit about astrology, what we're working with in the month of July as we close out. Now I want to really break it down to you as it relates to generational healing. And this week in my live healing session inside of my closed Facebook private group, this is complimentary to all women. And there's a link in the description that you can join us. I do like a weekly live healing session there too, to help you get more introduced and connected to these holistic teachings of generational healing. And this week, we're going to be talking a lot about hormones and hormonal imbalances. And so before we talk about that on the podcast, I want to give you kind of a preview of what it is that we're going to go deeper into over there. I want to share with you some data, science, because as much as I am aware that I am a spiritual being having a spiritual experience, and I am very much connected to my spiritual aspect of who I am, I also am a human being, and I have a physical body, and I love the science behind everything we talk about, because to me, it's bringing both together, both the science and the spiritual, so that we can really understand it and understand it not just with our mind, but with our hearts too. So I want to share with you this week this article that I recently found. And the good news is that now when you go online and you Google generational healing, what's the impact of generational trauma on your hormones, on your gut, on your mental health, on your relationship patterns, on your depression, on your addiction, you're going to get a ton of articles. And we're really blessed for that, because this is actually new. We barely started seeing a lot of articles like this come out into the mainstream media, probably 2000s, 2005, maybe 2008, around that time. Now you can go to TikTok, you can go to Instagram, you can go to Facebook, you'll scroll and you'll hear someone talk about trauma and its connection to your health. But that wasn't the case. We're very blessed now. We have doctors like Dr. Gabor Mate, one of my favorite trauma-informed doctors, who has really done the holy work for 40 years in the science lab, in his clinical studies, to really help us understand just how much generational trauma impacts our body, mind, and spirit, and why Western medicine does not address the root cause. When you go to the doctor and you ask and you tell them that you're having heart palpitations, or you have depression, or you don't feel good, or you have a disease, or maybe there's diabetes or immune system, they're not going to ask you, well, what happened to you as a child? Are there generational trauma patterns in your family? They're just not trained to do that. They're trained to be salespeople for the pharmaceutical industry. It's not their fault. It's just that's the way they're trained. I'm sure there's a ton of doctors that get into the industry because they want to help people, right? But that's not what's going to get them money. And that's not how they're trained by these pharmaceutical industries. I heard somewhere that pharmaceutical industries, by the time a doctor graduates, have spent almost $1 million in marketing to that doctor in order for that doctor to use them for the pharmaceuticals. Let me take a drink of my coffee, because when I get excited about what I'm talking about, I start talking really, really fast. And I'm still getting rid of that lingering cough. Beautiful. I'm still drinking pumpkin spice coffee. It's my favorite, and it's now fall time, but I still drink it even in the summertime. And I do like to drink my coffee black. Usually in the morning, I'll have like a black cup of coffee, and sometimes I like to get a little crazy and add oat milk, which oat milk, it's so yummy, but it's for a reason, like it has a lot of sugar in it. And I'm talking about this right now too because it affects your hormones. So it does make your sugar spike, but I love the way it tastes. Or I'll do like oat milk and then I'll put some cinnamon. Oh, and if I have cacao, I will sprinkle cacao nibs. Talk about like the best drink, best latte that you could ever create, and you do this at home because you're gonna get easily addicted to all that stuff out there too. Anyhow, we will talk about the gut and coffee and all that stuff next week, I promise you. But it is connected to our hormones. And what I was saying is that now you can Google, there's a ton of articles, right? I did a quick Google search on just generational trauma, hormonal imbalance, and there's a ton of stuff that came out. There was this particular article though that really caught my eye, and I'm gonna link it below, and it helps us better understand what I'm gonna talk about next, which is how do we actually heal this. And what this was saying was basically the title was How Childhood Trauma Changes Our Hormones and Thus Our Mental Health into Adulthood. And this was a really groundbreaking piece of work that was actually written in 2007. And it was written by this woman named Sarah Barox. She's an associate lecturer at Macquarie University. So these women are from the UK. I do notice that the Europe, Australia, Spain, they're way more advanced as it relates to holistic healing, as it relates to connecting trauma with our physical health, way more advanced than the West. I don't know if that's on purpose. I don't know if we're more sold out in the West to pharmaceuticals and that's why, or if it's because they're just ahead of the game. Because remember, like everyone always told us that the United States as America was like the best place to live. Everybody wanted to come to the USA. And yeah, there's a lot of opportunity here. There's a lot of we're like, I feel blessed living here that we don't get persecuted for our religious beliefs like in other countries, right? Our spiritual beliefs. And that is awesome. But now that I traveled the world, I was like, people have lied to us all this time because I when I went to Spain, people were so chill. Like they were not stressed out like the way they are here, which has to do with our hormones. When I went to Thailand, people were so chill. Mexico, I often go to Mexico. That's where I was born. People like literally take a 2 to 3 hour lunch so they could go home and take a nap and then continue their workday. The rhythm, the United States of America is very stressful to live in. Other countries are like they take care of their mental health a lot more. So we've been lied to. This is the place you come to work, which is not, and I love my work. I totally do. But we shouldn't just think that, oh, I'm gonna work all year and then maybe get a couple of vacations a year. That's like horrible. And that's usually the lifestyle that people live through here in this country. And that's why we have such high levels of immune diseases, which are correlated to hormonal imbalances, and we have such high levels of mental health. I mean, addiction, oh my God. This country was infiltrated terribly by addiction, and it was done on purpose, to be honest with you. And now we have so many people that struggle with this due to the fact that addiction is not why the behavior, but why the pain. We have a lot of people that are in tremendous amount of emotional pain and trauma. When I look at someone who's addicted, I see nothing but that Christ consciousness and someone who's calling out for help. When I had an addiction to alcohol, it wasn't because I was a bad person. It was because I had a ton of pain. And that's the whole thing that this article is really, really powerful in how it connects this childhood trauma and experiences with our adult life, and especially our hormones. So before we dive into the key points of this article, I want to help you first understand signs of when you might have a hormonal imbalance. And again, more women are already recognizing this, but it's key for you to really understand it so that then we can look at the solutions. Jen is saying, I'm drinking my decaf right now. I bought the wrong box. So that was done on accident. So I used to drink decaf all the time too, Jen, when I was pregnant, because I still needed the taste. Honestly, I don't know if caffeine gives me a rush, but I just really enjoy the taste. I really enjoy black coffee early in the morning. I have a hard belly. Oh, the neck, it could probably, the caffeine might be impacting me for sure, because the caffeine does take a toll on our estrogen. We're going to talk about that today, and cortisol levels and things of that nature. So if that happens to you, then yeah, pay attention to that. My mom is really impacted by caffeine. She can't have, even a cup will make her belly get really hard, and it hurts her. But this is all correlated, of course, to the type of coffee you're drinking, how much you're drinking, and all of those different things. Jen says, I was thinking that comes from my cortisol levels. It does. But a lot of the things that we don't talk about in hormonal imbalance is also estrogen, which is just as impactful. And estrogen, we'll get into it today so you can better understand it, but it's a brother of cortisol, and together they cause a lot of different problems in your body. And of course, you can feel it as sensations like the belly getting hard and things of that nature. So we'll look at that for sure today. Thank you for bringing that up, actually. So let's look at the science first, and then we'll get into exactly what you were talking about, Jen. So women now are recognizing that they have hormonal imbalances more and more. But for us to understand that, you know that you have a hormonal imbalance if you have irregular menstrual cycles. That is very common right now. Think about young women, girls nowadays. They're getting their periods at 8, 9 years old. Like that. When I was growing up, everybody was getting their period around 13, 14. I thought that was even early. Now, not only do you have irregular menstrual cycles, but the women are getting their period even younger. Why is that? The foods we eat, 1,000%. The foods you eat will absolutely give you hormonal imbalances. Cortisol, estrogen, adrenaline, processed food. Think of the United States of America, fast food, right? Nothing that's cooked at home. And even the foods that we eat, I heard a doctor recently say, the foods that we buy at the grocery store, things, they're not even enough to give you all of the different nutrients that actually you need. Like even water. There was this, I don't know how true this is, but there was a doctor who was talking about how we should be adding like electrolytes into our water, because the water that we drink, if it's not coming from a stream, it doesn't have enough electrolytes to actually keep us hydrated. So you might be drinking a ton of water, but now why are you still dehydrated? Dehydration is one of the most common problems most human beings, especially in the United States of America, suffer with. They don't even know they're dehydrated. I love to do IV hydration, and we're getting ready to do it again. I try to do it at least once a quarter. But IV hydration is where they put an IV into your arm, obviously, and they're giving you vitamins and enzymes and all these good things to keep you nice and hydrated. And I was talking to the nurse, because these are nurses that do this for you. And she was saying that, like 90% of ER visits could be avoided if people just kept hydrated, or if they called or went to and get an IV treatment, because most of us are walking around dehydrated. Imagine if you're drinking coffee and you're drinking tea, and even someone like me, like I know this, but I can get into my little ruts where all I'm doing is my coffee. I love drinking yerba mate, which is a natural plant. It comes it's the thin one though. There's two different drinks. There's the thicker can. I don't like that one. It's a thin one, and they only sell it in a couple of grocery stores. They don't sell it everywhere. And it's called yerba mate, and it's a natural plant, kind of has its natural form of caffeine, and it has a lot less sugar. I love the taste, and I love what it does for me, and it doesn't give you the same crash as coffee does. So I'll link it below if any of you are interested, but I could get addicted to that stuff. I mean, there were times where I was like drinking my coffee, and then I would drink my yerba mates, and then I would get like a latte or something like that. When did I drink water? And you go into these little ruts and periods where even if you meditate daily, if life is happening, like you're moving to a new country, you're starting a new business, anything, right? Then all of a sudden you're dealing with the stress in different ways. So that's why we have to really just not feel guilty, but just be conscious and aware of what the heck we're doing with our day-to-day activities. And we went through this whole thing this morning in Satna of breaking down how to set up a new routine that can help you tremendously do that. So irregular menstrual cycles, you know, you have a hormonal imbalance. Heavy or painful periods, your periods should not be heavy or painful. Now, what impacts this too? Birth control. When I used to have heavy periods. And I'm in my, I forget how old I am. I'm in my early 40s. And I've never experienced perimenopause or menopause or all these things that people talk about because of I keep my hormones as calibrated as possible through my Kundalini yoga practice. We're going to talk about how that works. But I used to have really not painful, heavy periods. Why? Well, because I was on birth control. You don't understand if especially you're using hormonal birth control, that's why your periods are irregular. That's why they're heavy and that's why they're painful because it's messing with your hormones. And you got doctors giving young kids, young girls, for the stupidest reasons. They had acne and now we're going to put them on birth control pills. Good Lord. Do you understand the effects of that? Then we wonder why it's so hard for women to get pregnant now. Well, imagine if you've been messing with your hormones through birth control since you were 12 or 13. That's insane. So heavy or painful periods or irregularity, there's some kind of hormonal imbalance there. Mood swings, anxiety, depression, absolutely hormonal imbalance. Unexplained weight gain. Oh my God. If you have a hormonal imbalance where you have tons of cortisol, adrenaline, and estrogen that is moving through the body, even if you stopped eating for a week, even if you went to the gym every single day, then you wouldn't be able to lose the weight gain because my face, when I have high levels of cortisol, even my face looks different. So unexplained weight gain or difficulty in losing weight is absolutely associated with hormonal imbalance. And you got to think about that too, at a deeper level. If you have a hormonal imbalance, you're probably not making the right choices of the food you should be eating, right? If you don't feel good in your body, when you have tons of cortisol, adrenaline running through your system, you feel nasty. So if you don't feel good, you're going to reach to soothe yourself with something. So I'm going to reach to soothe myself with that food that might not be the best for me, but it's the only way I know how to. So don't feel guilty about it. Just know that this is what's happening. The other thing that's a clear sign is fatigue, low energy, major sign of hormonal imbalance, insomnia, sleep disturbances, skin issues, excessive dryness, acne, hair loss, decreased libido in women if you don't have a sexual drive, very much equated to hormonal imbalances, hot flashes or night sweats, digestive issues, breast tenderness, headaches, difficulty concentrating, brain fog, muscle weakness. We all have this. We all, especially in the United States of America, have a hormonal imbalance. Now, this shouldn't be like a death sentence. This is just recognition. Okay, something's going on. Something's not right. Now, how do I deal with it? And the whole thing about what I was saying about estrogen is that estrogen is high levels of estrogen and estrogen dominance. It occurs when there's too much estrogen in relation to the other hormones, especially what is known as progesterone. And this happens due to various factors, including your environmental toxins. So you work at a factory and there's a lot of different toxins that are being released. There's mold or things of that nature. But of course, chronic stress. Chronic stress. That's what generational trauma is. When you've been under patterns of abuse, when we're going to talk about this article right now, childhood trauma. Childhood trauma is the most common generational pattern that gets passed down over and over and over. And if you're under this constant environment where you are stressed because you haven't done the healing work, that's a toxic environment, and that's going to mess up these high estrogen levels, which it's like a rippling effect because high estrogen, high cortisol, high adrenaline, then guess what happens? You overeat, you have more fat in your body. Fat in itself is a hormone. So then fat starts to secrete this nastiness in your body that then is making you feel even more sick. So It is a tower that starts to fall more and more and more when we don't get to the root cause. Now, in this particular article, I was talking about how these high estrogen levels impact overall health and well-being, how they contribute to conditions like I can't ever say this word, endometriosis, polycystic ovary syndrome. I remember when I was super young, I had these ovarian cysts where one of them just ruptured one day. I was in my early 20s, maybe even 19. And why did I have a cyst that erupted? I was under high levels of stress during that time. Imagine high level stress, hormones not working, then you got all these different cysts that are growing. That's all a rippling effect of the underlying emotional issues, of the underlying chronic stress that happens when we don't heal ourselves. So it's important to really know that hormonal imbalances can be a very complex, and they can involve multiple hormones. But if you yourself suspect that you're having a hormonal imbalance, it's really crucial, obviously, to consult with your doctor. There's naturopathic doctors now too. There's hormone doctors that can help you specifically. But overall, I'm going to share with you today also holistic approaches that you could be doing. How my Kundalini yoga practice, meditation practice, my spiritual psychotherapy practice led me to getting to the root cause, which led me to changing my lifestyle, which then allowed me to heal from an addiction to alcohol and to rebalance my hormones to the point where all those symptoms that I just shared with you, I had all of them, went away naturally, because we can absolutely do that. Now, is it cheating if you go talk to a naturopathic doctor? Is it cheating if you get hormone replacement? No, there are some women that absolutely need that. For example, if you're postpartum, the reason why there is so much postpartum depression, where it drives women mad, sometimes literally they do horrible things to themselves or maybe even to their children, because of a major hormonal imbalance. So I think women, especially after they have a baby, they need a doula. They need someone who's going to help them through what happens to their body, mind, and spirit and their hormones afterwards. That's another thing. What if, for example, you're going through a very traumatic experience in your life, grief? If you're someone who has been on pharmaceuticals for a long time, if you've been under antidepressants, how hard is it to come off of those? Praying for all of you, right? If that's a choice that you're making. But if you've been using medication for a very long time, then you're going to need some extra support. And it's not a bad idea for you to consult a doctor or a naturopathic doctor to help you deal with these imbalances, right? Because it's not like you come back into full balance. It's just that you're dealing with your stress in a different way. The other thing about this, and these are the things that the article talked about for in detail, is how childhood trauma leads to these long-term changes in your body's stress response system. So it affects your hormone production, it affects your regulation. And these hormonal changes then persist into adulthood. So then they influence your mental health. It influences the outcomes and increases the risk of various psychological disorders, the childhood trauma patterns. And remember, childhood trauma is not always so obvious, where maybe there was sexual abuse, maybe there was child abuse, maybe where there was like beating or violence or emotional. Childhood trauma can be mom was depressed and she couldn't nurture you. She couldn't love you. There's a diagnosis called RAD, which is a syndrome of, it happens a lot to children, especially that are adopted, or if mom had postpartum depression. If she had that, she couldn't nurture you as much as she wanted to. She loved you. She wanted to hold you and make you feel safe, but she was going through her own thing. And this RAD diagnosis, this is where they find out that these adopted children, especially, like, they grow up and they're very angry. They're very violent. They run away from school. They run away from discipline and adults. Why? Because they never received the nurturing care from their moms. And mom didn't do that on purpose. Mom was going through her own depression. Have you ever had depression? When you go through depression, like, nothing makes sense to you. Like, you think everyone else is the problem. You're completely closed out of the world. You don't have a desire to do anything. So of course you're not going to be able to nurture a child. So these early life stressors, they impact what is known as your HPA axis. And this is known as the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal. And this is a very important aspect of how these hormones work through your system, because it leads to this altered cortisol levels and other hormonal imbalances. Because remember, it's like a rippling effect. One stops working, then the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one. The study also highlighted how this concept of epigenetics, which we talk a lot about on this podcast, shows how these traumatic experiences absolutely alter your gene expressions without changing the DNA sequence itself, which means if you control your environment, which is the only thing you can control, then guess what? The same stress genes are going to be turning on, and you're going to have more hormonal balance. So what I loved about this article and this entire teaching on how childhood trauma impacts your hormones is how we're able to understand the importance of addressing childhood trauma and understanding that there are long-lasting effects on our bodies and our minds. Because ultimately what it does is that it underscores the need for holistic approaches to healing that consider both our past experience and also our current physiological state, which is also very, very important. So considering all of this, how do we heal? How do we dive into a holistic approach of body, mind, and spirit? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you a couple of things here. But like I said, on Wednesday, 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time in our private, closed Facebook group, we're going to be looking at all of it. I'm going to give you 4 different ways to heal hormonal imbalance holistically from a scientific perspective, Kundalini yoga, meditation, therapy, but also from a spiritual perspective. Of course, miracle spiritual psychotherapy. That's what the whole Wednesday life healing session is going to be about, techniques, process. How do we actually do this? So make sure you join us by clicking on the link in the description and asking to join our private Facebook group. Now, we've talked about in this segment how this article was describing this fascinating intersection of hormonal imbalance, the generational trauma. And now I want us to understand at least a little bit what, from a yogic perspective, what hormonal balance is really all about. Because from a yogic perspective, which is Kundalini yoga is the science of energy, how we see hormonal imbalance is as a disruption in the flow of your vital or pranic energy. So everything in this world is energy. It's always vibrating. Nothing, even the chair you're sitting on. If you get a microscope, there will be a vibration of energy at the core. So what this relates to in Kundalini yoga is the body's energy centers, or what is also known as chakras. So chakras are literally like small brains inside of your body. They're subtle. There's not a specific location for them. But these are the centers that actually process emotions. They go off balance when we do not process traumatic experiences. So for example, you went through something traumatic as a child, instead of the energy moving and processing, which is what healing is feeling, it gets stuck somewhere. It gets stuck in one of these energy centers, which is connected through the meridian lines, like in Chinese medicine, connected to an organ, like liver, like the heart, all these different things. So you had a traumatic experience as a child. Now your breath usually will not move above your root chakra, which then causes all of these other chakras, which are responsible for different aspects of your emotional state, to then become disrupted. This disruption can be caused, of course, by physical abuse, by emotional abuse, or even spiritual factors, but especially generational trauma. The endocrine glands, which produces your hormones, are very much associated with the chakra centers. And when these energy centers are blocked or they're imbalanced, it can lead to these hormonal irregularities. That's why Western doctors, modern day doctors, are not trained for this. If we just actually looked at the trauma that caused these energy centers to become stuck, then what we would deal with your hormonal imbalance in a very holistic, root cause way. Trauma, especially when experienced in childhood, this article that I just shared with you, can absolutely impact the body's stress system. This stress system that I just talked about right now hypothalamic pituitary adrenal, it's known as HPA axis. This is what plays a very crucial role in your hormone production and in the regulation of your hormones. But when trauma occurs, maybe even as an adult, there was somebody that you loved that died and you're still grieving through the process. That's what leads to chronic activation of the HPA axis, which then what does this result in? Now you got elevated cortisol levels that disrupt the balance of your hormones. This changes the production of sex hormones like estrogen and testosterone. This alters your thyroid function. It's not a coincidence why we have so much thyroid problems. This also disrupts the release of growth hormones and what is known as a hormone that helps with that, which is prolactin. So the fact that you've experienced an emotionally traumatic experience now completely brings your hormones out of balance. And these hormonal changes can absolutely persist long after the traumatic experience occurred. So you went through a traumatic experience as a child. Your personality as an adult are these hormonal imbalances. This is why it's hard for you to speak your truth, your voice. It's hard for you to be confident, why you don't feel worthy, why you're constantly guilty, feeling guilty, why you're constantly afraid of the other shoe to drop. This is a perpetuating a cycle of hormonal imbalances, and it then is associated to a ton of other physical issues like diabetes, like liver problems, like heart problems. Now, when we look at the endocrine system and its role in our overall well-being, we know that the endocrine system is a network of glands, and these glands produce and secrete hormones that are directly into the bloodstream. Now, these hormones, they act as, think of it as like a chemical messenger, where it starts to regulate various bodily functions. So the major glands of the endocrine system, which is very important, include your pituitary gland. This is often called the master gland, especially as a yoga therapist. We know this to be our master gland, which controls all of the other glands in your body, mind, and spirit. And then it produces this growth hormone that I was talking about. Your thyroid gland regulates metabolism. It regulates your energy production. Your parathyroid glands, these control calcium levels in the blood and the bones. And then your adrenal glands, which produce stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. You've got the pancreas, which regulates blood sugar levels through insulin and what is known as glucagon. These words, I'm telling you, I'm still trying to get them right. And usually I'll just practice until I start to get them specifically right. But not knowing how to pronounce them right doesn't stop me from sharing the information, because as a Kundalini yoga therapist, when I go to my classes, I'm still finishing up my degree. It's like a 3-year process. Like, that's all we learn. All we learn is the science. It's like if I'm in medical school. And believe me, it's very draining, because I'm like, oh my God, I have to remember all these different hormones. I have to remember what they do. And I got to remember to pronounce them right. So please excuse my pronunciation. We also have what is known as reproductive glands. Of course, these are the ovaries in women, the testes in men, which produce sex hormones. And then we have the pineal gland, which produces melatonin. This is what helps you regulate your sleep and helps you basically not be not go into insomnia periods, which cause a lot of physical issues. So this endocrine system that I just shared with you, it plays this vital role in maintaining what is known as homeostasis, which is basically this level of neutrality where your hormones are actually functioning, where you're regulating growth and development, your metabolism, your sexual function, your reproduction, your sleep. This is possible for all of us. But when this system becomes disrupted by trauma, the endocrine system, or by other factors, which is usually trauma, it can then lead to this wide range of physical and emotional system. Now, how do we make these changes now that we know a little bit about our endocrine system? Well, this is what we're going to be talking in depth inside of our live healing session on Wednesday. So join us there, and I love to be able to answer your questions, because one of the things that I've noticed is that when there have been women who have joined my academy for generational healing, and they come into my academy and they have recently visited the doctor, and the doctor will tell them you have very high levels of cortisol. They will join my academy. A few weeks go by, maybe they have to go see their doctor again. I've had 2 different women tell me this, that they went to go see their doctor again after joining my academy, and that the doctor asked them, "What are you doing?" Because their cortisol levels had gone way down. And this is what I'm talking about as it relates to holistic healing, to dealing with the root cause in order for everything else to start to function again. So, for example, in Kundalini Yoga, we're actually right now we're in 21 days of vitality challenge inside of my community Satori. We did this challenge where this month we're working on healing the physical body, because you're not just one body, you're 10 energetic bodies. There's 10 layers of who you are. But this month we're focused on the physical vessel. We're understanding it. What is it? What is it for? But then more importantly, how do we activate it? How do we make it? How do we heal it? And one of the things that we're doing is we're doing 21 days of journal prompts, 21 days of spiritual psychotherapy, of understanding the body from a yogic perspective, from a Course in Miracles perspective. But then we're also doing 21 days of this very powerful Kriya. So in Kundalini Yoga, there's meditations and then there's Kriyas. A Kriya is a certain series of exercises, postures, hand movements that you do to get a specific result. But sometimes a Kriya could be just one movement, one breathing technique, one way you position your body. That could also be a Kriya. So what we're practicing for the next, or we've been practicing for 21 days, we're on day 18, and I join in on these challenges just as much as my community. And let me tell you, the amount of impact that they make on me is just as much as powerful as they do for my community members, because I'm constantly evolving. Yeah, I broke a ton of generational karmic patterns in my lineage. I broke the addiction to alcohol pattern. I disrupted the toxic relationship pattern in my lineage. I healed my marriage after being married for 25 years. Like, my marriage does not even compare or look like even what it used to look like. I healed my relationship with my mother. I found forgiveness for those people that I thought had hurt me the most, and for myself. I no longer have depression. All these different things, right? Childhood trauma, I was able to find forgiveness and healing, all of those things. But I'm still constantly growing and evolving. Now this new era for me, like the vision that God has given me for my life is so beautiful, and it feels so right. So I have to deal with stress all the time, but stress is not bad. Stress is only bad if you stay in it. So I roll up my sleeves just as much as my community members, and I get in there and I do the work with them, because that's the only way that I also can really teach them. Everything that I teach is through experience. It's not something that I learned off of a YouTube video, or it's something that I went through. Not only did I go through it, then I got teachings behind it to actually learn it. So what we're doing for 21 days, and we've been doing this now for 18 days, is we've been practicing what is known as the Sat Kriya. The Sat Kriya, Yogi Bhajan, who brought Kundalini Yoga from the east to the west, would often say that the Sat Kriya is literally like, you could do 3 minutes of this meditation, and it's like you're doing a full Kundalini Yoga class. Now, this is such a powerful exercise because it affects your navel. And when women are not in their power, when they've been through a lot of childhood trauma, when they've been through a lot of chronic stress, you're not in alignment with your navel. Your navel is not at the center point, because that's where we actually pull all of our power from. And this is also connected to our solar plexus, which is connected to confidence and feeling safe in our bodies, feeling good for being who we are. This particular area, the navel point, it harmonizes your entire glandular system. So practicing this Kriya meditation for 3 minutes, what it does is that it changes the blood stream. It changes the flow of blood into the different areas of your body, including your brain, which is very much needed. It heals you from especially sexual phobias. So if you have had any issues or traumatic experiences with sexuality, the reason why it does that is because you're literally pulling with your chanting and your breath, the breath from the root of the chakra all the way to the crown. So it's cleansing, it's purifying, it's harmonizing. And what this does to your glandular system and to your endocrine system and to your hormones in general is major reduction in cortisol levels, major reduction in the addiction to adrenaline, a nice balanced secretion of estrogen. So everything basically starts to fall back into place, all because of estrogen, all because of the breath, the chanting, and the way that you're positioning your hands. Your body is a sacred temple that is not to be worshipped, that is to be used as a communication device with God. But if your body is running all this adrenaline, estrogen, and cortisol, that's going to be impossible. And what this Satkriya does is that it helps us bring ourselves back into the power of the navel point so that we can start to harmonize thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And then through that, bring hormonal regulation. Now, like I said, inside of our life healing session this week, we're going to talk more about specifically other techniques to do this. And I'll be able to better share with you the science behind how that actually works. So check that out on Wednesday at 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. There's also a spiritual approach that we must take to support hormonal balance. This is also just as important. You're a spiritual being having a physical experience. And this is why you will always hear me talk about, and this is one of the things we talked about last week, is the process of salvation through forgiveness. Because when we do follow the process that was laid out for us, the reason why I love A Course in Miracles spiritual psychotherapy is because it's our brother Jesus Christ teaching us these things that we think we can't do and that we have to worship him for. We are here to do the same powerful, life-changing, legacy-building things that our brother Jesus Christ did. And he has laid out a clear path and process of doing that. When you have past trauma, you usually hold a lot of resentment, meaning it's hard for you to forgive. You have grievances. Well, when we have grievances and we live under anger, resentment, that absolutely reduces increases stress hormones. And it absolutely makes your hormones completely out of balance. When we then choose the healing work, this is why spiritual psychotherapy is so powerful. What it does is that it reduces stress and it then promotes hormonal equilibrium. And this has been also proven scientifically. In fact, there's even an area of your brain where there were scientists who were doing these studies and they found out that there was an area of the brain that was turning on for people that actually had a daily spiritual practice, prayer, meditation, where those people that didn't have a daily spiritual meditation practice, this area was off. Well, the prefrontal cortex part of your brain is responsible for compassion. That's why people are narcissists, because they've been through so much trauma that this part of the brain don't work anymore. They don't have a daily spiritual practice. Then you're like, are these people are evil, or how could they do something like this? Well, yeah, it's of course the bullying or the bullies bullying others, but more importantly, the trauma has impacted the brain, where even if they wanted to be more compassionate, they couldn't. This is also very common for doctors. I don't know if you knew, surgeons are the number one sector in the medical field that commits suicide. Surgeons. And why is that? Well, surgeons have a very important role. You know, they have to do surgery, and then many times when they're doing surgery, people die. They don't make it. And that causes a lot of moral disconnection. They feel responsible for the deaths of others. So when you are, what this is known as is compassion fatigue. And doctors are not the same, especially post-COVID. They're not the same because the amount of atrocities that they saw, people that they felt they could have saved, things that they were told they had to do to help people, family members that couldn't see their dead or their deceased family members. There's a lot of trauma from that. So the reason I noticed this, because when I was going back to my mom with her, when she was going through her health situation last year, I would notice that doctors are very disconnected. I knew that a lot of them had like bad bedside manners, you know, like they're very fast and quick and they're on to the next patient. But after my mom was going to the doctor and last year, I noticed it even more. And it's not even in a way where they're like evil or mean. It's just that they're so disconnected. They're so out of it. And you would think, well, they're such intelligent people and, they know all this stuff. That doesn't matter. If you go through a lot of traumatic experiences and you do not do the holistic healing work to help you move through them, that area of your brain is going to become separated. And now that's what they call compassion fatigue. That's why people are struggling so much with their mental health. And that's why it even leads them to these very sad things like unaliving themselves. Why? Because of the amount of tremendous stress that has been put onto them. So choosing forgiveness not only physically heals you, but it actually disrupts the pattern. And like I said, on Wednesday's live healing session, I'm going to go deeper into what this looks like, how to actually do it. We're also going to talk about the other spiritual solutions, because there's 3 other very important spiritual solutions that must be incorporated in order for our hormones to actually start functioning correctly. So click on the link in the description box below, and I will guide you through that on Wednesday. Now, remember that all of these practices that I've shared with you, all of these tools for self-discovery and healing, they all invite us to look within. They all invite us to challenge our perceptions and to really open ourselves up to new possibilities for health and well-being. So, inspired by this, it really does begin to create curiosity in the mind. And it actually allows you to know just how responsible, but also grateful you should be that healing is all in your hands. So join us on Wednesday so you can learn a little bit more about that. Hormones is something that I can talk about for years. So there's so much to say around that, and it is a leading problem for women right now. So I do hope that you take the time to learn about all of this and what you can actually do about it. So let's move on to now our ancestral guidance for the week. And before we do that, let me take a drink of my coffee so I can get a little bit of a rest here. Yeah, as my first language was actually Spanish, and I still speak a lot of Spanish. I try to speak as much as possible, even at home, so that my children can speak it really well. They like to they are pioneers where they want to learn the Spanish language, so they teach it to themselves too. Jen says, as I'm listening to your live right now, I had a huge download. Amazing, sis. That's amazing. God put you here for a huge reason. I love you so much, woman. Thank you for being my guide. Always, sis, it's an honor. And thank you for being my guide too. If you only knew how much you teach me, you would totally see your radiance and your love and this incredible power that you harness within you. Let that download marinate and then share it with me. I would love to know later. Send me a DM privately. I would love to know what was given to you. If you don't want to share it publicly, that's totally okay. And sometimes we just need to let things marinate too. So maybe the ancestral guidance is going to help you even more. By the way, thank you for those that catch the podcast live too. Sometimes I get onto my little rants and I forget to look at the chat. Oh, you have the chills, Jen. I'm so excited for you, sis. So excited for you. Let it marinate, integrate it, and then, of course, feel free to share it with me. I'd love to hear more about it. So let's talk about the ancestral guidance, because this one's juicy this week. So remember I was talking to you all about entering into a new era where we're surrendered, where we actually trust God, where we know life actually does work out for us, and we're trusting every part of the movement. Now, of course, that comes with hormonal balance, right? If we're not balanced in our hormones, it's going to be very hard to trust the higher power. So it's like you got to do one to get the other, but you got to do the other to get the other, right? What the guidance this week from our ancestors is telling us is that we're ending this cycle where there was a lot of maybe conflict, right? Inner war, but also maybe you had conflict with somebody in your family, well, some kind of struggle where you were arguing or disagreements. This is our immediate past, which is the 5 of Wands. And it's really all about us understanding that even though we may have experienced these really bad internal conflicts, these really challenging experiences where we had to defend our truth, that has served us in a big way, where what we have learned to do, and this, I think this mostly applies to internal conflicts. If you've been struggling with someone outside of you, if where there has been disagreements, think about what that disagreement actually means in your internal world. Like, what is triggering me about that person or that situation that can be used as a mirror for something that I'm going through within me? Because what this card is saying is that in the immediate past, we did that. There were challenges. There were things that showed up, people, experiences that caused this inner conflict, that caused us to feel out of sorts and not grounded. But we dealt with them. We faced them head on. And that's the era that is now closing. Now, as we step into the now, our card for the present moment energy is the Six of Pentacles. And this is what I mean, what happens when you truly trust and surrender to God. And again, I highly welcome you to go watch that movie, the Baskin Robbins Gentleman movie, and to read that book, Michael Singer's The Surrender Experiment, because it's a true story of his life. But what the Six of Pentacles is that we're now in this like era of generosity, where we've learned how to allow ourselves to receive, but by the same token, we're giving. And the reason why we're so good about giving is because it's because you're trusting and surrendered, and God is like making all these opportunities for you. And one of the things that A Course in Miracles teaches is that we shouldn't be in awe about a miracle happening. That those are normal things that should be happening every single day. I mean, even Einstein said that. If you don't believe, you could either believe life is not a miracle, or you could see it as one big miracle. And Jogi Bhajan would often say that too. I don't believe in miracles, I rely on them. And I know somewhere in your life you have experienced this thing where you're like, this came from God. This was not me. Or maybe you had a near-death experience. Maybe there was a problem that got resolved and you didn't have to actually do anything about it. That's what the Six of Pentacles is. It's like this balance between giving and receiving. But the big message in this, when I saw this card, I was like, the reason that this is because we are in this new era of trust and surrender, where we are getting all of these different opportunities not because we're hustling, but it's because we know our worth and because we trust a higher power, where we finally have let go of control, that authority problem. Remember, that's the paradox. The more you let go, the more success you experience. It's when we hold on, when we try to control, when we don't give and we don't allow ourselves to receive, that's where we create time and suffering. So the present, the ancestors are like, we're proud of you. Expect to be supported with money. This card literally means somebody giving you a gift, a downfall, a lottery, not a downfall, that sounds bad. A windfall, that's what it's called. A windfall of money where it's just coming and flowing to you. But again, don't believe that you don't deserve it because you're not doing anything. You deserve it because you finally surrendered. You finally are trusting God, and you finally know you're worthy of all the miracles. So keep that balance of giving and receiving. Now, what we have to be careful with, and this is very reflective of the August astrology energy too, is the very infamous card in the tarot that is known as the Tower. Now, when people see the Tower, especially if you've practiced tarot for a long time, some people tend to get freaked out because the tarot or the Tower in the tarot means like sudden change. Like you were going this way and then you get the call. This happened. And it's a shocking change to your life. Now, in our reading though, it came reversed. And I absolutely look at the readings upright and reversed, because in reverse, what it's saying is that you have an ample opportunity for gradual transformative change. So not bulldozer method. Now you get the call and your whole life has changed completely. It's gradual. And even though you're going to resist this change, what the full moon told you needed to surrender, that there is evolutioning happening here. That you are, even if you're not conscious about it, you are unconsciously embracing change and evolution because you know it's crucial for your continued healing. So what this card is saying is, You're being encouraged to slowly, you don't have to go cold turkey on anything. You know you're not doing things right. When I wanted to change my addiction to alcohol, I was not hearing a voice that was saying, you're a bad person. You're a horrible human being. That's what I used to hear before I started doing my healing journey. When I wasn't practicing Kundalini yoga, when I wasn't practicing A Course in Miracles, the guilt of me, what I was doing, is what kept me in the pattern. With Kundalini yoga and A Course in Miracles, it's like I'm doing my meditation practice every day. These patterns fall off of the body. And the way they fall off is, oh my God, today I actually feel good. I don't need a drink today. My God, I don't need to feel angry at that person today. That's the gradual change that the reverse tower is saying, is that you went through major change. Like I said, this full moon in Capricorn, we're in a new era where things actually work out for us. So now you have awareness of the beliefs, the thoughts, the habits, all these different things that you should be letting go. Like in the book, Michael Singer, what was holding down the balloon from going up, the hot air balloon, was the tethers, which is our beliefs, our generational trauma patterns that keep us down. That's what was holding him down. So what this card is saying is, I'm going to take one tether out at a time, the weight that holds the balloon, hot air balloon down. And you're going to start to see with awareness the things that you want to let go of, the people, jobs, the habits, the beliefs. And this is going to be a gradual change. And these are all outdated beliefs, habits that no longer serve your highest good, especially as it relates to generational pattern. But God's not going to come in with a bulldozer and be like, you got to change right now. God never does that, by the way. That's our ego. But in this situation, you are entering into this era of giving and receiving your support by God, by your ancestors, by your angel team, by your spirit guides, whatever that looks like. And now, in your immediate future, the only thing you need to watch out for is to be conscious of when you're resisting change. And what that looks like, resisting change, it doesn't mean that, I'm doing the thing that I'm not supposed to do. I'm eating that thing, I'm drinking that thing. That's not what resistance to change is. Resistance to change is when you are being really hard on yourself. Because I don't know if you knew, one of the things, we did a whole coaching class around this, but one of the things that happens to your nervous system as you start to heal, as you start to level up into life, the nervous system is now getting into a whole new frequency of new thoughts, experiences, and beliefs that you're having. So while it's doing that, it freaks out really, really bad. It's that whole thing. I know better, but I'm not doing better. But just you being aware that you know better, but you're not doing better, that is a clear sign that you are healing. There's a lot of people that never get to this phase of, I know better, I should be doing better. They just are victims to the world. They did this to me. It's the government's fault. It's my mom's fault. It's my dad's fault. It's all of these people's faults. They don't even get to the, oh my God, I could be doing better. If you are in a situation right now, that's what this card is saying. If you are in a situation where you know better, but you're not doing better, congratulate yourself. Be proud of yourself. That is your nervous system teaching you and showing you that you are growing and that you're on the way to whatever desires you have set out, especially during this full moon in Capricorn. So while it's tempting to feel freaked out when you know that change needs to happen, what's going to keep you in this routine is these three things that I talked about in Sadhana this morning. I'm not going to go deep into them, but just understand that they are comprised of, first of all, having some kind of way that you reward yourself for sticking to what you said you were going to do. Then comes the discipline, and then your environment. Where you need to focus the most is in your environment. What are the things in your environment that need to change in order for you to slowly, gradually start to let go of these belief systems? So for me, I'll just give you an example. I want to commit to 31 minutes of meditation. I do more than that. I'm just giving you an example. So what am I going to do? Because I know that's what's going to help me with my hormonal imbalance. And I know it's going to help me release this belief system of scarcity or mindset. Okay, so now I got to develop a routine. I want me wanting to do 5 minutes of meditation every day. So how do I do that? Okay, well, I'm going to develop some goals. Once every day I'm going to meditate for 3 minutes. And every time if I do this for a week, I'm going to take myself out to get my nails done or to get a massage or something that makes you come alive, right? Not only that, I'm going to instill my discipline is I'm going to hold myself accountable. I'm going to get an accountability buddy. That's what we're talking about in our community. And then number 3, my environment. Well, guess what? Because I used to be Cinderella in my meditation practice too, where I would do it like at 11:53 p.m. to make sure I got it in for the day. I was never a morning person. I just started waking up at 3:45 a.m. about actually more than 1,000 days ago. So it's probably like 2.5 years. But prior to 2.5 years, heck no. I was at the office as a real estate broker by 10. So I would get up like at 7 in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning. I hated the mornings. Absolutely hated them. I never did I think that I would be a morning person. Never. And here I am 2.5 years later. I wake up at 3:45 in the morning and I can't even imagine not doing that anymore. So gradual. But the one thing that I did do was change my environment. So now I have a specific place where I meditate, which is here. I have my incense, I have my sage, I have my palo santo, I got my water. It's a nice environment for me to do the things that I said I was going to do. Versus if you don't even have a space like that, then it kind of makes it a lot more difficult. And also people will come and bother you and all those different things. So reflect. This is what I would love for you to do for this week based on this guidance. Reflect on these recent conflicts and opportunities for growth in your healing journey that you've had to come through. And it could be inner war. Practice balance and giving and receiving. So know that you are in a new era where you're supported and you can trust God and you are free to receive and free to give. And then identify one small step, not big, one small step that you can take this week to release this old pattern, this old belief that might be tied to generational trauma that might have also been exposed during this full moon in Capricorn. And through this, you'll be able to then approach change with a lot more patience, with a lot of self-compassion, understanding that healing is a gradual process. It is a cyclical process. It comes in cycles like the wheel of fortune. What goes up must come down, and there's no good or bad. So the ancestors have spoken this week. They understand that we're going through massive change, but they're not asking you to go cold turkey or completely change your life overnight. They're asking you to trust the process, to surrender to the process, to literally visualize yourself as the caterpillar turning into the butterfly. When the caterpillar goes into hibernation to turn into the butterfly, he doesn't go in there or she doesn't go in there saying, these are my expectations. By this date, I need to be a butterfly. By this date, I need to do this. That's not what the caterpillar is doing. The caterpillar is completely surrendered to the process of the alchemization that is happening. That's what the ancestors want you to do this week. Massive amount of change. I know. I'm going to surrender to it. I'm going to trust the process. I'm going to stay hibernating as long as I need to, trusting that I ultimately will turn into that beautiful butterfly. And that also the caterpillar is not ugly. But the caterpillar served its purpose. It's beautiful to be a caterpillar. It's beautiful to understand that we're constantly and always transforming. Love this guidance for this week because this is the era we're entering into, the soft era, the era of the Christ consciousness, the era of compassion where the meek have risen. For how long have you been told that being kind and compassion will get you in trouble and that people will take advantage of you? That no longer applies because eyes are everywhere and your energy speaks louder than your words. And that is what is happening in the world right now. So that's what I have for us this week. I hope that this weekly astrology update has assisted you in preparing for your success this week. I hope that today's topic on generational healing as it relates to hormones has helped you, like our friend and sister Jen over here. And I also hope that the ancestral guidance will help you truly surrender to this beautiful time that it is to be alive, because these are exciting times, and what a blessing, what an incredible honor to be witnessing what we're witnessing in this world. So thank you for you. Thank you, Jen, so much for joining us live, of course, and thank you for sharing. I can't wait to hear more about your major download and breakthrough that you had today. And for all of you, of course, if you have any questions or comments, post them below here in the comments section. You can also send me a direct DM, private message, email, if it's something that you want to talk about off public view. You can totally do that as well. The other thing is, highly recommend you join us in the private. This is a free Facebook group where we're hosting a weekly healing session. Over there, all women, we're all talking about these things that we go through with generational healing. And every single day, you have even more education as it relates to generational healing. So thank you for joining us so much on the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement podcast. Together, we are breaking generational cycles, and we're creating a legacy of healing for 7 generations before and after. Remember that your healing journey is a gift to you, to your children, your parents, your ancestors, and future generations. Until next time.